This episode I'm looking at why the Soft Moon were great and why they have left an unfillable hole. Welcome to By Candlelight, beaming goth, darkwave and post-punk straight into your brain, coming at you like a hamster with a dark agenda. So I'll level with you, I was planning this week's episode with some tunes playing, and when it's over by the Soft Moon came on. I stopped, sat there and absorbed this track that now has a new level of poignancy. For those of you who don't know, the Soft Moon was the solo project of Luis Vasquez, who sadly died on the 18th of January 2024. I did pay tribute at the time, but that was in the early days of the channel and I think I was just still a little bit in shock. So why was the Soft Moon so great, and how did this guy leave such a huge unfillable hole in our subculture? Let's start with his humility and his complete lack of pretension. Search up Luis Vasquez interview on YouTube and you'll likely see just a normal looking guy who was just so passionate about his music. He wasn't embedded in a certain image, nor was he projecting any kind of persona. Luis never needed to do any of that. No doubt you'll just see him in a casual t-shirt and just a pair of jeans, and you'll probably see him relaxed and probably even laughing. He didn't have to use image as a blockade to hide behind. What you saw was what you got. At least that's how he came across. And this is all before we've reached the music. The bottom line is he didn't need any distraction or flashing lights or colours to distract from a lack of musical substance. When you listen to his debut album released in 2010, you've got to bear in mind that he had no intention of it reaching the outside world. And that's not making excuses for it because it's not very good, it's actually excellent. This was a documentation of thoughts, memories and feelings, and was probably made as a cathartic exercise rather than a fully fledged campaign to win a fan base and to win over a record label. Ultimately though, it was released. But listen to the vocals, they're either whispered or buried deep within that mix. So highlights such as Tiny Spiders or Breathe the Fire, they rush along, drenched in a wall of sound, but the voice is hardly there. Once Luis had a debut album under his belt, he then released his second one, Zeros, in 2012. Intended to be more thematic, this one does bring out the vocals a little bit more, but not by much. But you do get actual sung notes on this one, such as on Inside's Lost Years and Machines. But the key difference here is that this album was made to reach the public. If you think about it, any kind of artistic insecurity around the thought of will my music be appreciated doesn't really apply in this case. The validation of the Soft Moon as a music entity that could win fans, followers and listeners, well, that came on that first album that was never intended to be heard. It's like he unintentionally used that first album as a musical litmus test before then deciding to push his art out into the world. This seems to have turned into a chemistry lesson. Overall, Luis made music for himself and not for anyone else, and he didn't adopt any kind of image or posturing to forward his success. Moving on to Deeper, released in 2015, well, this is just my favourite album by him. Come Here, Little Hug. This one highlights the second point of why he was so great. Aside from the opener Inward, which is predominantly an instrumental, Black seems to adopt that same whispered vocal as per his previous albums. But hit Far and you're into something else entirely. That track is like finally coming up for air after being underwater for so long. It's this slow progression from introverted to extroverted across all of his albums so far that is my second point. Many artists and bands progress and develop their sound over their albums, but Lewis's path from this is never gonna see the light of day to this is just fantastic to hear in real time. I highly recommend you try it. Listen to each album in order of release. You'll hear everything progress from post-punk to an almost industrial sound. Back to Deeper, there's just too many highlights to highlight. Far is the big one, but also Desertion is excellent. Wasting too, and Feel. There's just far too many to mention. We get more of that sound on 2018's Criminal, but it doesn't quite have the same edge for me when compared to Deeper. But what it does do is solidify the sound that Lewis seemed to be most happy with. If you want some highlights from this, I would say Burn, It Kills, and Young. But you're your own person, you may have differing high points. Lewis then made another album under his own name rather than the Soft Moon moniker. So A Body of Errors was released in 2021. An instrumental album, this one pushed his industrial leanings even further, maybe even entering the realm of experimentation. I do appreciate the bravery of this album, but it wasn't one that I was able to embrace as much as his output as The Soft Moon. This brings us to his last album, Exister, released in 2022. Obviously, when it came out, none of us knew that this was going to be his final album. But as it is, I'm pleased to say that it's such a strong one. Answers landed with me a bit like something from Deeper. Become the Lies feels a lot more polished than his other output, but still has that dirty, gritty, synthy sound overseeing events. What else have we got? Monster is an epic slow one, and Him is actually a collaboration with Fishnark. The thing is, I can remember at the time thinking, this album is amazing, what is he gonna do next? But it all ended. I'm not sure if Lewis was working on new music at the time, but we know that there hasn't been anything additional released since. But it doesn't matter because his body of work stands up to repeated listening and appreciation. He was highly respected in the industry, having done remixes for Mogwai, How to Destroy Angels, which is practically Trent Reznor, She Passed Away, and Boy Harsher. So my final point about the greatness of The Soft Moon is an obvious one, but no less important. The Soft Moon is predominantly one guy. So that's Lewis doing all of the writing and then playing all of the music and then providing the vocals. As a musician myself, that is a tough call. It can sometimes get quite overwhelming and you can feel like you're in a one-person echo chamber with no one to bounce off and no one to take responsibility for other aspects of the music making process. From the album Deeper onwards, Lewis was also involved in the production and the audio engineering, as if he didn't have enough to do. I know it's not unusual to be a one-person machine in the music industry, but Lewis laid himself so bare with his thoughts and his feelings and his memories all crammed into his music, and there was no pretension there and there was nothing to hide behind. It was just him laid bare. He was a one-person creative force with zero ego. He crafted and developed his own sound over 6 brilliant albums. It's like he just got on with the job, and that's why I think he's so great and why he has left an unfillable hole, at least for now, in our subculture. Let me know your thoughts on The Soft Moon. Did you ever meet Lewis? Have you ever seen him live? And which of his albums do you love the most? I'll put a link to the Soft Moon Bandcamp down below. Until next time, see you later.